So hi, this is Kathy at my best year. And today I'm really excited because we have a wonderful gal, Lisa Sharp, that we're going to be interviewing. And I know we both run decluttering groups, so we've got that in common. I will share with you that I met Lisa through a visibility club that we both were in. There's a gal named Sandra who lives in Brussels that runs this fun group where we got to practice more being online, being out there, being visible. It's been a lot of fun. And then we connected and made friends online from there. And I just love what you're up to, Lisa, and all the fun things and the joy that you bring into decluttering, which can get kind of boring for some folks.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, both personally and professionally, if you don't mind?
Oh, sure. Well, I'm, like Kathy said, I'm Lisa Sharp. I am the owner of Clear Calm Space. I am a professional organizer, but really I'm a space alchemist.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I love that.
Really what I do is I transform people's spaces and their relationship with their spaces. So professional organizer sounds a little stuffy.
Yeah.
You know, like when I first heard of professional organizers, I thought, ooh, I'm really good at that. I bet I could do that. But I was a little afraid of like how constrictive that title might be. And I think I have a background in social work. I use my social work background a lot in my business. And so through changing space and people's perception of their space and their things, there's this wonderful alchemy that happens where there's really just a cool transition and transformation for people. So
Yeah.
I've been doing that for about 2.5 years officially. And I live in Atlanta, Georgia. And I am happily married I'm also a former librarian. My husband's also a librarian and an IT guy now. And we have 2 kids. So we have a really nice, really cool life. I have a happy life.
Cool. How old are your kids?
My son is 12. My daughter is 9. We'll both
Okay.
flipping to the next age pretty soon, sooner than I would like.
Got it. Now, your husband's also a librarian. Did you guys meet in a library?
No, we didn't. And it's sort of funny. We both came to it kind of late in life. We're both we're kind of meandering souls, and we both sort of had to come into our own a little bit older in life. We had to try on a lot of different hats. So we both worked in libraries, but that's not where we met. We met through a mutual friend. But it is funny that, like it's like librarians around here, right?
That you have that in common is interesting. Yeah.
Right.
So how do you think being a librarian and a social worker sort of impacted where you landed now?
I would say I use those skills all the time in my work. And it's really funny. Like after I became a librarian, and I did it for several years, and I worked in the public library systems for about 10 or 11 years. And the thing that really always drew me to that was not just the books, it was the relationship with the patrons. So that is the common thread through my life, is it's always about the connections with people.
Cool.
And I really like to shepherd people from one place to another. So in libraries, I did that with helping them find things and researching things. When I was in social work, I did that with their relationships or getting them through hard periods of their lives. And that's exactly what I do now. So it's all the same thing. It's just in different iterations,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, got it. I lead groups online as well and do raw cleanses and decluttering. And I went and walked the Camino de Santiago. And I used to think that all of those were random, different things. And then I realized, and it was about a half a year ago, that actually they all are, like you were saying, about transformation and just how fun that is to watch people's lives, sometimes through different channels, just start shifting and changing and new opportunities showing up.
Mm-hmm. That's so cool that you did that. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
That's really amazing.
Yeah. One of the things that I've read is that, like, kind of beware of organizers, because they just want you to buy all these bins and boxes and organize your stuff. But help me know, like in the modern day world of organizing, is that really true? And how does that apply to you?
You know, it's interesting. I think that there are sort of different camps of organizers. I would say any professional organizer worth his or her salt would not get you to, encourage you to buy a bunch of stuff. Because really what the issue is that we have too much stuff and that we're telling ourselves all kinds of stories about the stuff, So I would say that it's really important to be aligned with who you're working with, because everybody has a different style.
Yeah.
And there are going to be some organizers that are in it more because they enjoy the organizing the stuff and less about the people. And then there will be other organizers that are more about the relationships and less about the stuff. So it's just sort of an emphasis. So, I always joke, like, if somebody shows up on my doorstep and they just want like a bunch of Heloise tips, I'm like, yeah, I'm not your girl. And there are plenty of wonderful people that do that. So if that's what you're looking for, it's just sort of like, knowing what is your goal? Why are you seeking help?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the why is really important, because even the why is what will carry us through those tough projects. Like, and usually the why is what we want to experience in our lives. Like the name of your business, the clear, calm space, it captures that quite well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If without knowing why you are doing it, the level of change will be far more superficial, and the likelihood that it will stick is a lot lower, because we have to have that inner drive. If we don't have a really clear reason or vision of why we're doing it, then we're really talking about changing a whole lot of different habits and ways that we're moving around the world when we're changing our internal space. Our space, meaning our homes, not just in our internal space, but those two things have to jive, because if they don't, that's why, like, I don't organize for other people. I help them make their decisions themselves.
Yeah.
Because if I just go in and I change everything in your house, Kathy, you'd be like,
where's the pepper?
Here's my stuff, right? Because that's your life. That's the way that you think about stuff. That's the way that you interact with your belongings. So yeah, it's important.
Yeah. You talk a lot about self-care, which I also love. And so tell me that connection between self-care and decluttering.
Well, again, it gets kind of back to, what do we tell ourselves about our stuff? And a lot of times we sort of get into these situations in our life, not necessarily because we were really drawn to do those things, but because we thought we were supposed to. You move into a certain neighborhood, maybe for your kids' education, but you don't really like the neighborhood, and your kids are gone and you're still there, and you're sort of like, I don't like my neighborhood. Or you might dress a certain way because those are the social norms within the group of people that you hang out with. And so you might have a closet full of things that don't speak to you. It's not the same, that you're not really in touch with who you are. It's more just sort of going along, down the stream without really sort of stopping and becoming conscious of that. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about self-care, because this is a very deep issue that we're talking about. It's really not just about your silverware and where you should put your glasses. It's about how you move through your life, what sort of decisions you're making, and how aligned are you as a person with the trappings of your life. And so and again, that's the shepherding part of it, because a lot of times we just get stuck and we don't really we just know we're uncomfortable. We don't really know why. And so just sort of taking the lid off of that and investigating and saying, like, well, are we making these decisions because of who we are right now, or who we were 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 20 years ago? And, because life is just, it's very organic. It's always changing, and our space needs to reflect where we are and where we're going, not just where we've been.
Great. I love that. What are some simple tips to begin decluttering and simplifying our lives?
Shopping.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things.
Stop
And
the incoming.
yes, yes, and you and I are very aligned about this because yeah, and I love your like no waste and low waste. You know that I'm so drawn to that whole movement because I think again it's becoming aware of what our habits are and what sort of impact not just the impact in our personal lives and our personal homes, but in our communities and on the planet. So it has this really strong ripple effect. And it seems like, oh, it's just this one thing. But if all of us sort of stop, unplug from the matrix and say, I don't think I'm going to shop as much, or I'm going to ask my friend if I can borrow that sweater instead of buying a new one, or, I'm just thinking some of these things through really has this beautiful effect. And all of a sudden it's like our whole demeanor changes, our outlook changes, and we become lighter in our lives really in every way. So yeah, again, it's that sort of self-awareness. So looking at, I would just say, really like not shopping for a couple of days. I'm going to do that in the challenge that I'm running right now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, ha 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 ha. Yeah, we're going to do a little no shopping stint. And I love how many people have done that. They might do it for a week or for a month or whatever. But I'm even just saying I'm not going to shop on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Picking a place and starting there and starting to become aware of what's coming into our homes. The other thing, and again, these are not exactly decluttering, but these are sort of stemming the tide of the stuff that's coming into our space. Because again, I think that self-care piece is really about being a good steward of your created space, So the other thing that I would say is to just really be careful if somebody says, oh, I have this box of books, or, I don't even know, kids' clothes or something that my kids have outgrown. Do you want these things? Instead of just going, yes, of course, because that's the polite thing. It's okay to say no. No really is acceptable. And you can say it in a really kind way, but you can say no. And I think just stopping that flow of stuff coming into the house is really, that's the most important part, because if you're only decluttering, but it's still coming in, you're just going to be exhausted and you're not going to be successful.
You'll be decluttering for the rest of your life. Yeah. So I know that paperwork, and I know this very intimately because I spent the last 2 days doing the Marie Kondo, where I took all my papers to my kitchen table and sorted through them. And I've been scanning things, etc. Can you give us some of the tips and hints of what to keep and what not to? Marie Kondo's, she kind of scares me. She's a little bit more into getting rid of so many papers, but I don't know if I can do that all in one fell swoop. So I'd be curious to get your input on that.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that Marie Kondo has become, she's, so popular, and it's really sparked this great conversation that is really overdue to my mind. But I do think it's important to remember that there is a cultural difference. This is a single Japanese woman who's living in a very small space versus the typical American. So I worry sometimes because I'll have clients say, oh, I read the book and it was too extreme. And I know people just are kind of looking for an answer. And I think she has a lot of really good advice. But I think we all just need to let it apply to who we are and where we are in our space right now. Again, the self-care thing, the self-awareness thing. But the paperwork thing, I have to tell you, that's absolutely hands down the number one thing that people come to me about. And it's fun because I get to put on my librarian hat. Stuff. I'm a real weirdo that way, because it's really satisfying, and really because I see that it causes so much pain in people's lives. So really some quick things that would be helpful in terms of like what you should keep. Most people really keep kind of everything, and they also, it's like we're doing the digital bills, and then we're printing, and then a lot of us are still also getting, the paper copies in the mail. Mail is absolutely number one, the thing that people get overrun with, and then it gets piles, and people move the piles and they can't figure out what's even in the piles, and then it's looks like it's junk mail, but then there's like a birth certificate stuck stuff in the middle of it. I've run into that more times than I can count. Yeah, so I would really say that that dealing with your mail first and foremost. Again, this is stemming the tide, so that then you can then deal with the backlog, because otherwise you're not going to get very far very quickly. So getting off of lists, dealing with junk mail. You can just Google how to remove myself from junk mail lists, and there'll be lots of different places, resources that you can go and get yourself, magazines and all that kind of stuff. And then just in terms of like what you should be keeping, a lot of people will keep like their utility bills. They'll keep like every single financial paper. Financial stuff is always the worst, because they always send it's like 10 pages
Right.
in a statement. It's never just like one or two pieces. So, like those sort of things, really getting clear with probably your accountant, and, saying like, what do I actually need for tax purposes, and what can I let go of? Because a lot of the time you don't need every single piece of paper that's coming in. And a lot of the time you can get away with just having the year to date statement for your financial stuff. You can, keep it up until the end of the year, and you're tracking to make sure that it's current and it's correct, but you don't need to keep every single one, because I have clients, I'm just so much. So yeah, definitely checking with your CPA. Just going to like irs.gov is obviously a really good resource that will let you know like specifically like how many years do I need to keep of banking statements, that sort of thing. But it all boils down to your taxes. Anything that you have sold, like car titles and homes, and anything that's really big, keep all of that. Just keep it. Don't, and you can still go through, and there's usually like a lot of supporting documentation that's just like Joe Schmo's card or whatever that you can ditch. But you probably do really need to keep all of those big legal things forever.
Got it. Now, what advice do you have as far as scanning documents?
Well, I would say scanning is an excellent idea, but it's also important to really be systematic about how you are tagging those things, where you're putting those files. And I always recommend that when you're going through that process, that you have a hard copy of an index that you are creating. And again, it's the librarian in me, but it's really important that you can find what you're scanning, and then you have some sort of a system that then, because you'll scan for, 30 minutes, you're watching something on Netflix, scanning something, that's great. And then you get busy and you do something else. And then 3 days later, you come back to the same project, and it's like, where am I? What was I doing? So just having a notebook that's always out, you're just jotting down, like, this is going in this file, this is what I've named it, and then being really consistent with the way that you are labeling things, the different files, I think is really helpful, because not only is it good for you, because then you'll be able to find it, but God forbid if something happens to you,
right,
somebody else needs to access these files, it's the same thing. Like, then that's just the digital version of our paperwork in our homes. And if it's just kind of willy-nilly, it's not so great. So I think it's kind of a pain, honestly, to set it up, but it will reap so many rewards over the years. I definitely think, get a system and stick to it.
Mm-hmm. I ended up buying one of those Doxy scanners. Mm-hmm. And wow, I really liked it a lot. It's very easy to use, not totally cheap. I bought one that was like $175. Mm-hmm. And I've been amazed. I had probably, papers stacked very neatly together, at least 6 inches high. And within a couple of days, I've been able to scan all that in and to organize it. So it just feels good to do that. I still am probably going to hang on to the documents for a little while, just to get my comfort level up with, how to find them on the scanner, and go through at least one tax session with my CPA person. So.
Yeah, and definitely always do what your CPA tells you. Your CPA overrides any other information that I'm giving you or anybody else, because it really is super, super individual, and everybody has their own comfort level, It's so, like, Don't follow somebody else's advice if it really feels, if there are red flags going up. Listen to your gut. That's always my best advice. Listen to your gut. You know the best.
Yeah. So once we get organized, what are some of your tips for staying organized?
Stemming the tide. I know I'm going to sound like a broken record. Really, really and truly, if you're not watching what's coming into your house, you're going to lose ground really quickly. But besides that, it's maintaining your home, decluttering, organizing, all of those things they're all individual things, but they're all tied together. And if you think of those things as like brushing your teeth, taking a shower, doing your laundry, it's not like it's a one and done. You're never done with any of this stuff. That's why, like, when they have all those like magazine things, like at the beginning of every year, it's like, finally get organized. And I always want to go, don't tell people that, because it's not true. There's no done. You're not going to get organized. It's an activity. It's not an end result.
Yeah.
And so just really kind of shifting that mindset of my life will be fabulous. I'll be happy. I'll be rich and have a beautiful husband. Just get my paperwork in order. That's just not reality. Yes, it will absolutely reduce your stress level. Is it worth your while? You bet your buddy it is. I mean, it's really good stuff, but being realistic about how much work it's going to take I think it's really important. It's not a one and done, and you have to maintain it. You're not gonna like brush your teeth and be like, okay, well, now I've done that, and put away your toothbrush and never brush your teeth again. You have to do it every day. And it's just part of being alive, and really thank God that we're alive and that we have the problems that we have.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. So you mentioned in your work that you're a space healer. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about that.
Again, that kind of comes back to the alchemy thing. I do some work with Feng Shui. That's not my wheelhouse, but I know a lot about it. I got really interested in it when I worked in the library 20 years ago.
Okay.
I ran across the book by Karen Kingston, Clear Your Clutter with Feng Shui.
Oh.
And that is a fantastic book. It's one of my all-time favorite books. I've reread it like 30 times. And her work, Karen Kingston's work, really informed me and informed the way that I lived my own life. And when I started changing some things in my life, in terms of the design of my space, the flow of energy through my house, I really started to see a big difference in the way that I felt in my space. And people would come to my house and they would be like, it just feels good in here. What do you feel good? And it really was because of the energy work. So that's the sort of stuff that I do. I do it a little bit on the sly when I'm working with my clients. I'm not always super open about that. But like the way that color affects us, the way that furniture placement affects us, it just does. I mean, everything is energy. We are energetic beings. There's no denying that these two things are interconnected. So when we release the things that feel hard or awkward to us emotionally or on an energetic level, we feel different. People will always say to me at the end of our sessions, God, I feel like, there's like a weight off my shoulders. And it, like, actually energetically is, because that connection is so deep. And when we shift it, we just feel better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will share that in the paperwork that I've been dealing with, I have come to notice how hard it is for me to let go of certain documents or things. And what it tends to be is things where people acknowledged me. And so some of what I'm getting is how much I've allowed other people in my life to be the ones that said whether I was worthy or not. So it's been kind of a very deep and intense decluttering these last couple of days. Not that it always is for me by any means, but I was still hanging on to 7th grade, where I got a certificate for being good in cooking class, like as if that would make a difference to hang on to that. So,
but it does. I mean, yeah, and it's interesting that you have that. So, what did you end up doing with that? Did you keep it?
I'm scanning the documents so that if I need them, they're there. But I'm going to let go of them. I really want to shift from letting others define if I'm okay or not, and have a big breakthrough. So that's what I'm going for. So I'm like ready to let go of all that stuff. Here again, it's scanned, but I doubt that I'll ever look at it. But yeah, it's been good stuff just to make that realization. And I know when I was doing my bathroom, I had all of this makeup and probably 50 eyeshadows. I'm not kidding you. And then what came up later for me was, oh, if I listen to the heart of what's underneath there, it's that I wanted to be beautiful and felt like I wasn't. I kind of had bought into all the advertising that we as women get exposed to and such. And so for me, identifying some of those things has allowed me then to let them go, sort of getting why I was hanging on to them. My whole thing is I'm not going to get rid of anything until I'm ready. And sometimes just, taking more time or coming back around, looking at it maybe next year or what have you. But yeah, there's a lot of growth opportunities in doing decluttering, I think.
Yeah, and I just have two quick things to say about that. I think that's you really hit the nail on the head about it's a process, and it really this is kind of why I was saying earlier about like working with a professional organizer that really feels aligned with you. Because if you're working with someone, and it doesn't even have to be someone that you're hiring, it could just you be your mom, your best friend, whoever. Somebody is with you and they're really pushing you. I would really suggest take a step back from that person.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't have to be a big confrontational sort of thing, but just like really honoring your pace. Everyone is different. Everybody has their own stories. And these things really have to grow of their own volition. You can't force someone into it. And if you're getting that sort of like judgment sort of thing, like, why do you have 50 eyeshadows? It's like,
right.
That's not a helpful thing. So just really honoring who you are and what that timeline needs to look like for you, I think is great. So I'm super happy that you said that.
Yeah. The one other thing I did today was listen to that lovely podcast of you with Jen. And from there, I wanted to ask you just one more question, and then we'll be going to the audience for any questions. So feel free, audience. We've got at least 4 people on the live webinar. We've got Jane, Kathy, Mary, and Jean on the line. So if you have any questions, feel free to start typing those in. But what I wanted you to answer while we're waiting for that is the when to sell something versus to donate it. I think that's a good one.
I love this question. I'm really passionate about it. Yeah, and it's funny because I was just talking to another client about this very same thing earlier today. And she and I have been working together for about 6 months. And she basically, she's come to her own conclusion about when you're talking about getting rid of things, it's really, a lot of people have the same first gut reaction of, oh, I need to make some money back off of this because I spent a lot of money on it and I feel guilty about it. I need to make some money. I can't just throw things out. I don't want to just give things away. It's not going to go to the right person. There are 50 million different reasons, right? And I really understand that. And I do think that there are some things that it's easier to sort of recoup your costs on, but really I want people to think about what is their return on investment, not only about money, but about time, mental bandwidth, and your energy. Do you really have the time to devote to having a garage sale? Some garage sales are super lucrative. Most garage sales, you might make a couple $100. If you have the time, the energy, the inclination, the space to be able to do that, and $200 is worth your time, then by all means do it. But what I see is a lot of people who spend a lot of time selling books, for instance. Books do not retain their value by and large. They just don't. We have a glut of books. It's a wonderful problem. It's a problem. We have so many books that they just don't hold their value. and it's hard for us because we're become like really emotionally attached. My favorite book, and you should also enjoy it. And this is, this has a lot of meaning to me, and therefore should have a monetary value to it. But the fact is that most people really overvalue their belongings. So they will like hang on to things thinking, oh, I'm going to sell this on eBay. And so they might have like a whole room full of stuff that they want to sell and make that imaginary $3,000 someday. But meanwhile, they're using up the time, or the space rather, that they have on stuff that they really are not, they don't really want to do it. And it's like this energetic suck.
Yeah.
And it's this sort of like, there's this always, I have to be doing this. I should be doing this. And I just don't think it's worth that little mental for most things. I just don't. I've been doing this for years, and I see over and over and over and over and over again how many people just, when they finally go, you know what, forget it, I'm done. And then it's like their whole demeanor just opens up and changes. Their energy changes because they're free. They're finally free from whatever that bond has been. So, when I talked to Jen about that in that interview, and I would encourage anyone who wants to know more about that to listen to that interview, because that's a little bit more nuts and bolts. We're talking about return on investment, and here we're talking a little bit more about the energy, but it's all the same thing. And it really is like, what is your time worth? What is your energy worth for X amount of dollars?
Yeah, I'll be sure to post that below on YouTube and on our webinar thing too. So we've got one question from Jane, and she's asking, can you name the book again and the spelling of the author's last name, Kingston?
Yes, Karen, Karen, Kingston, Kingston. And it was a book written in 1998 or 99. And it's called Clear Your Clutter with Feng Shui. Karen has, she's a wonderful website. She's a fantastic teacher. She lives in Bali, I believe. But she has had many, many, many different versions of that book. So, because she just keeps revising it. So you can find current copies on Amazon or wherever. And of course, you can usually find it at your local library. I'm going to put my plug in for my libraries there.
Yeah.
And, and honestly, that's a book that I have read so many times, and I listen to it. I have a copy of it on audible.com that I just listen to personally because it just fills me up. I just think it's just such a lovely book, and it always inspires me. And just the way that she speaks really gets to me in a way that, when you just connect with a teacher somehow, and it's like, yeah, this is it. So yeah, I'm a big fan of her.
Cool. I'm gonna have to get that book myself because I've never heard of it before.
Yeah.
Great. So we've got another question here. Let me just pick up the iPad here and read it for you. So I'm endlessly frustrated by my partner's hoarding and living in a shared environment that suffocates. Any thoughts on how to energetically manage living in a congested space when I cannot seem to stop the flow and accumulation?
Okay. So hoarding is one of those terms that gets kind of bandied around. And hoarding is actually a diagnosable mental illness in the DSM-5. So I'm not really sure about your particular situation. If you're just saying that he has a ton of stuff or he actually has a hoarding disorder. So I'm going to assume that he does not have a true hoarding disorder, but that he has a lot of stuff and it's making you crazy. And I completely understand that. Really, there are a couple of things that I would say about this. In terms of just space clearing, I would say if you have a space that feels really congested and hard to breathe and move and think and function in, opening windows, regardless of the temperature, is really, really key. Doing that at least once a day, getting some cross ventilation. There are so much pollution inside of our homes. It's a little frightening, really. And just getting some cross ventilation is super, super important. You can do a lot of like true space clearing techniques. Karen Kingston, again, she talks about a lot of those in her book, and I would definitely recommend checking that out. So just in terms of energy, I would say burning some incense, doing some space clearing where you're like walking around the house or apartment, whatever, and clapping, using bells to sort of get energy moving around in this space is super helpful. It works like really, really quickly, and will need to be done repeatedly. Really simple things like taking out the garbage every day. You know, and I've worked with plenty of people that just had a lot of stuff. They didn't have a hoarding disorder, but they just had so much stuff. And it's like, okay, first, straight away, open the windows, take the garbage out, and just always, always, always have that flow of stuff leaving the house, whether it is stuff to Goodwill, stuff to the garbage, stuff to recycling, stuff back to your mom or your sister, back to the library, whatever. Just have it all, like every day. That's just something that you do. So, you know, when you're working in a space where it's not all of your stuff, you really don't have any control over anyone else's behavior other than yourself. And really, if you start coming at it, that the person that you're trying to change is going to do this. They just shut down. We all do that. It's human nature. So really the best way to change someone else's behavior is to just start changing yourself. So start changing your own behaviors, looking at your own shopping habits, how you are personally bringing in stuff to your space, and how you take care of whatever that little quadrant is. And sometimes with a spouse, we just need to sort of negotiate and say like, okay, you have a lot of stuff and it's really bothering me. Can we just sort of define the space a little bit better so that you have your own space and you can do whatever you want to with it? And this is going to be more of my space. And I think that's a really very reasonable way to begin that process. And again, it's really, I think, just being really, really respectful is the key. Respectful of yourself and respectful of your spouse, no matter how much they're driving you crazy.
Got it. So that is kind of a good segue to my next question. And that is, when does somebody need to hire somebody else to help them? Like at what point is it beyond the capacity of a person to do the decluttering on their own?
Yeah. Really, if you're just stuck, we all know that, right? It's like we all can feel the sort of that like oppression, like when you're not happy, you're not gaining any traction on your own. You've read the books. That's sort of a running joke. When I go to my client's house, we always uncover at least one decluttering book under a pile of stuff.
Yeah, I never thought of that. That's great.
Yeah. So, it's not because of a lack of desire. It's because of a lack of skill. And organizing and decluttering is a skill set that can be transferred. So working with someone that you feel really aligned with, that you trust, that you feel comfortable with, because there is really just about nothing more intimate. I mean, I'm in people's underwear drawers. I'm in their financial papers. I'm in everything. Yeah. And if there's any sort of like sensation that that's not the person for you, don't do it. But if there is a connection and you do feel moved to work with someone, just reaching out, going through the National Association of Professional Organizers. That's our big organization for organization. And they have a wonderful website. You can search in your local area. I work online, so I work with people all over the world, and I work with people here in Atlanta. And that's becoming more of a thing. It used to be only that you would hire somebody in your own community, but sometimes now there are other organizers that you can work with online. So it just kind of depends on where you are. But really just like there are so many things that we pay for in terms of service. We don't generally work, fix our own cars or cut our own hair, or, there are like a million things, or do our own taxes even, right? And because we hire experts. And I really think this is the exact same thing. If you've had a hard time in your life getting organized or really feeling successful in letting things go, then I think it's really time to hire someone who can help you navigate and negotiate your space, because life is short. If you are hating where you're living and you keep recreating the same sort of space wherever you're going, then it's time to make some changes, some lasting changes.
Got it. And so if somebody wanted to work with you, what are like the levels of service or types of services that you provide?
Well, again, like I work here in Atlanta and I work online. I work via Skype, so it's kind of a fun way to do it because so much of what I do is mindset. It's all about, like, again, like how are you thinking about your life? How are you thinking about your space? How are you thinking about your stuff? So when I work with people via Skype, it's this same sort of format where they're like turning your camera and showing me what it is, and we're going through it, and we'll run across things like the letter from your teacher, and it's
Right.
what is this thing, and it all kind of comes out. So it's really interesting because it doesn't matter as much if I'm working with someone in this capacity or in person. Of course, when I'm working with them in person, I can physically maneuver their belongings around in a way that I can't when I'm working online. But it comes down to the same thing. So if you're the sort of person that can follow directions, who's really kind of has their head in the game, then working online is a really brilliant way to do it because you can do it, anytime that you need it. It's kind of fabulous. I also teach classes, and I have a new online daily decluttering, which you're so good at also, which is just basically giving people assignments and having them come into a group community where they can share their wins. I find that is incredibly empowering because I know what the inside of other people's houses look like. I know what their closets look like. I know what their lifestyle is like, but we don't share that with one another. So there's something about being in that community where we can just sort of be like, it's like flashing somebody like
Yeah.
what the living room looks like. And it's so normalizing. It's so normalizing. It's like, oh, everybody has the same issue.
Yeah.
And once you kind of let go of some of that shame story, because there's
Yeah.
so much shame and guilt and should-haves and could-haves and all that sort of stuff that goes into our homes, that when you share it with other people and you start to see, oh, well, I'm pretty normal.
Right.
It's like, then it sort of buoys you to continue working and progressing. So I love that. I love doing community decluttering stuff. That's really fun.
Yeah. Cool. I've got another question here that I will just read off the iPad again. This is from Kathy, and she says, thank you, very helpful. She was the one asking the question about the hoarding partner. Can you comment on releasing an emotional attachment to stuff? I can't bring myself to let go of my camping equipment, even though I haven't been camping in over 15 years. It feels like letting go of a part of myself, my identity as an adventurous, outdoorsy person. It's a great question.
Fantastic question.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's exactly it. And she's, Kathy, great. Thank you for that question, because most people don't get to that point until I'm working with them, and you've already figured that out. So bravo, that's wonderful. What I would say to that is, it's okay to change. It's okay to evolve. It's okay to be the different person that you are now than the person that you were 10 or 15 years ago. And by letting go of something that was really meaningful to you, but that is no longer current in your life, you are creating space for something new to happen. Whether that's a new physical object, a new relationship, a new idea, a new iteration of who you are as an evolving human being. So letting those things go, I think, is really beautiful. And I think it's so empowering. And the other thing is that you can always get something back. You can let it go, and maybe next year you'll be like, you know what? I think I want to go camping, but this time I want to go to the tropics. And all of my stuff before was for Arctic camping. And so I'm going to do something totally new. And I'm going to go out to REI and get myself outfitted and go do that adventure. Mm-hmm. It's giving yourself the mental space to grow and to be who you currently are and who you're evolving into. So it really is okay to let it go. And again, like Kathy and I were saying earlier, it's important to honor who you are, to let it go in whatever process feels right to you. So, you don't have to get rid of everything. You might get rid of the things that mean the least to you. and you might only keep the things that really actually have a really, really deep connection. And you might just hang on to those forever. And that's okay. You don't have to get rid of it.
Yeah. Cool. The only other thing that I would add to that is that if the feeling of outdoorsy and adventurous is, if that's still part of your current reality and you want more of that in your life, to look at what are the current day ways of adding that into your life, whether it's going for a walk in the woods or planning an adventure of some sort. So if that quality is important to you, maybe focus on the quality versus the thing. Yeah.
Yes. Brilliantly stated. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Cool. You briefly mentioned that you have another event that's coming up. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Or maybe it started already. I don't know.
It did. It started today. Woo!
Good timing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I've been wanting to do like a membership program for like the last year and a half. And I've been running these challenges, these decluttering challenges. And every time I do it, that the synergy of people working together just inspires me to no end. It makes me super, super happy to see that. So this year I finally was like, I should probably just do this instead of just talking about doing it. So I just created, it's the Clear Calm Space Blueprint. So it's really just a membership where you can come in. It's a really inexpensive way to work with me personally and to sort of get a feel for how I work. And it's a way of just like systematically going through your space because, and we're going to be doing one room every month. So it's just going to be this sort of progression. If you join it in June, you have access to the things that we did in January, however you want to work. I'm like super laid back and like, whatever works for you, do that. But so it's just like daily emails out to my peeps where they're just having something really small. And I'm a big believer in focusing attention and creating really fun habits. This does not have to be this arduous, hideous. This is like all about creation. This is a very, very creative endeavor. And if you shift to that mindset, the whole world is your oyster. So that's really like my focus, is to get people really excited about creating a space that feels really good to them and supports them in their daily life. So they can come over to my website and check that. I have some information on my website about that.
Do you want to just say the name of your website one more time?
It's www.
Triple W.
I sound like my 9-year-old. Clearcalmspace.com.
Cool.
Yeah.
And what I would add is, so Lisa and I do some things that are similar, but we do some things that are different. And so people who've been in my decluttering group, one of the things that I did was last year at some winter solstice, woke up and thought the same thing like you, that, oh, wow, all this synergy and people helping each other was so great. So I created a program called My Best Year, where it's about not just decluttering, but it goes off into other topics. So right now I'm doing January is a simple life and looking at how we can simplify. February is going to be about intention and what we really intend to create in our lives. March is health, and then it goes on to finances, relationships, etc. So we'll put the information for both of us down below so that you can find it. For me, you'll find me at mybestyear.me. So that's www.mybestyear.me.
Just the 3 W's.
Yes.
I love it. I love that you're doing that holistic approach. I think that is so key. These things all play together very, very well. And it's really, when you start to get all of those things moving, that's when you have your best life. Absolutely. Well done.
Yeah. Good stuff happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, here's a question from Jane. Okay, I got that one. Okay. So I'm not a huge shopper, but I'm looking around my house. It's stuff from my past that I have problems letting go of. I have stuff packed away from when my mom died 15 years ago. it's kind of more of a comment than a question, but anything that you want to say regarding her comment.
Jane, I feel you on that one. I always say that, like, when I go into people's spaces, whether online or in person, there's always this sort of line of demarcation. Like, you can look at someone's stuff the way that you can read the years in the strata of the rock in the Grand Canyon, right? So it's like, you know, this is when my daughter was born. This is when my mother died. This is when I got sick. This is when my husband was depressed. And it's like life is moving, moving, moving. And then it kind of goes like this, you know, just goes sideways for one reason or another. And it's always some sort of really deep issue. It's never just, you know, like something trivial. It's, you know, I got a new job, I moved. It's any of these things. So, I mean, that's so normal. So what I would say to that is that, again, getting someone who can help you go through those things, whether hiring someone, having a friend who just has a good heart, who's really objective, that can help you move the stuff through your space, and doing it at your own pace. I know I sound like a broken record, but it's so important. I helped a client here in Atlanta. She had a garage full of her grandparents' belongings, and she had lost her parents at a very young age, and so she was raised by her grandparents. And I mean, she had hundreds of boxes from her grandparents, and she was sort of like, she hired me, and she was just, I think she thought that she could sort of whip right through them. Every single thing in these boxes had a story. It wasn't just, you know, like towels.
Right.
Like, you know, so it's a slower process, you know, and sometimes when you run across the towels, it's like, woohoo, I won the lottery because I can just get rid of those and it's not a big deal. But, you know, like getting rid of, I call those that sort of stuff the low hanging fruit. That's the stuff that's easy emotionally to flip. So getting some wins in there, you know, where you are letting go of things that really don't have a lot of impact can make that energy start moving. And once that energy starts moving, then the momentum can start. And then that's when you can kind of deal with the harder stuff. But I always say, don't start with the hard stuff.
Yeah.
You got to get some space in there, some emotional space, some time in there. And you got to get some wins in there. Otherwise, it'll be like that 10 years from now. And we don't want that to happen.
Yeah. Marie Kondo saves the sentimental items for last. In any book that I've read, that it just makes sense to start with the easier, less emotional things first.
Yeah.
And like you said, even if it's a small thing, to feel that win and to go ahead and take on some of the small projects first, I think is always another smart way to start. Yeah.
Fruit, big fan. Do those first.
Cool. Karen is on the line here, and she asked, I have boxes of pictures of my children. How can I organize them? Should I scan them?
Photographs are super tricky, and that is not my wheelhouse. I'll tell you that. I personally have boxes of photographs of my kids that are right over there, and eventually I'm going to hire one of my professional organizer friends to help me with it, because they're just tricky. They're just hard to do. I would say definitely doing something that's really simple, like if you are just having them like in groups. So like I worked with a client recently, and she had the same sort of issue, but she had like decades of photographs from many generations. And so we just went to Michael's, got some boxes, some of those nice, you know, archive quality photography boxes, and put like a decade as the label. It was like, this is the 80s.
Right.
Anything that looked like that was about right, sorting them that way.
Yeah. Love it.
And then you can kind of like, once you get to the end of your boxes and you have sorted them by decade, then you might go in and fine tune it. But you know, photographs are just, yes, you can scan them. There are lots of companies that will do that for you. Again, you can go to the National Association of Professional Organizers, which is napo.net. And they have people who do this specifically, who work like on big projects like this. Is like their whole organizing business is doing people's photographs, or scanning companies that's all they do. So if you have a lot of them, I would definitely look into hiring someone, you know, to help you with that, because that is an arduous process. As I look, like it's like the only thing in my house that's not organized.
Well, and I work with a lot of minimalists, and sometimes everybody's thinking we just, oh, we got to get to the least amount of stuff, etc. But really, it's all about having an intentional life and figuring out what gives you joy. So keeping photos is fine if that gives you joy. For me, I had a lot of photos, but when I looked at them, there were duplicates. You know, maybe on one camping trip, there were 15 pictures, but really 5 captured what I wanted. So I think prior to scanning to look at whether any editing might work for you is a smart idea as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, times have really changed. You know, like every 10 years something new has happened, right? So even like 15 years ago, like when my 12-year-old, when he was little, we did, you know, we took everything to Walgreens, right? And then we had all these grandparents to send the pictures to. So then we had like 3 sets of
Right.
pictures, have like huge amounts, and it's like we only need like 3.
Mhm.
But it's a process. So definitely going through and editing out, again, low hanging fruit. I have no idea who this is. Gone. This is completely out of focus. Why do I need that? I have 60 of the same picture. There goes 59. You know, just doing that sort of stuff can really, really dramatically shrink the number that you're really needing to do something with.
Yeah, cool. Well, I just want to thank you big time for your time and your expertise and your charming spirit. I really like working with you and the way that you work on things, Lisa. So.
This has been such a treat for me. I appreciate it. Thank you for asking me, and thank you for everyone for coming and playing and talking.
Yeah, I just want to thank folks who had questions for us and who were here today. And then other people who will be watching this on the replay, what I want to let you know is that if you have questions, you can still submit those. They'll come to me, and then I can share them with Lisa, and we can get an answer back to you. So know that even if you're not live, you can still submit those questions. And I'm assuming that you're okay with helping answer them, Lisa.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I always want to help. That's my MO.
Okay, great. So thank you one and all, and I will go ahead and sign off for tonight.
Thanks, everyone. Bye, Kathy.
Bye.